Welcome to Murfreesboro Storytellers as we take a look back at 2017 and some of our standout episodes. In March, we interviewed City Mayor Shane McFarland and County Mayor Ernest Burgess on a topic of extreme importance to us in the coming years: solid waste and the closure of the local landfill. Both mayors stressed how important this issue is to Murfreesboro and Rutherford County. The problem we're facing, I believe, is the short life term that we have left for the Middle Point landfill, which accepts solid waste from the city as well as the county.
Yes, I think you see opportunities within a growing county and a growing city, and whenever I speak to people, people want to talk about parks and roads, but it's not one of the high topics that people think about is where does all our solid waste and our trash go when we throw it in the dumpster. And so that's one of the things that we're all working on is what is that next step that we do when the Middle Point landfill comes to a close.
As they drive toward Walter Hill, if they look to the right, they can well realize what has happened to our solid waste, right, Mayor Burgess?
That's where it is. And another thing, our people we sort of gotten ourselves spoiled here in that we haven't had to pay anything to put our residential waste into that landfill out there. So it's been a very, very, I guess you could say, good process for the city and the county and everyone in our whole county is with respect to what it actually costs. So that's going to change drastically as we move forward in that whatever the next step is, it's going to cost something. And we're going to have to spend a lot of money. We're going to have to forego a tipping fee that we're getting. The county's getting almost $900,000 a year for everything that comes in from outside this county. They pay a fee, and we get a part of that fee per ton.
So the solid waste that comes into Middle Point is not just from this county.
I believe, Shane, they told us maybe as many as 30 other counties are bringing some things in here from time to time. And it's what we're putting in from Rutherford County and Murfreesboro and all the other centers that we have located here is, I believe, less than 30% of what's really going into the landfill.
John, I think something that from talking to different groups, not a lot of people realize that Middle Point, that's a private facility.
Correct.
One of the things that we've been able to benefit, as Mayor Burgess has said, is that we have not had to pay tipping fees. So the city of Murfreesboro, we pick up about 45,000 households per week. That's how many people we pick trash up for. And from one corner of Murfreesboro, our trucks will drive straight to the Middle Point landfill and we'll dump the waste there. And that's really one of the things that going through this study that we're about $5.5 million a year is what our entire solid waste department budget is. That includes brush pickup. But the numbers we're hearing are significantly higher than that when we're going to have to take into account not being able to use that facility and figuring out, well, do you haul it? Do you turn it into energy? What are the different things that we do? And that's one of the things we're excited that our group has gotten together in conjunction with Laverne, with Eagleville, with Smyrna, Rutherford County, and we've all really come together to say this is not just a Murfreesboro issue or a county issue. This is really an entire regional issue that we're all going to work through.
How did we get where we are now? What is the history of Middle Point?
Well, Middle Point, through the process of them getting permitted, and I think this goes back to, say, 1988 or thereabouts, and the county, I think, had some control of that process and maybe some control of that property. So there was an agreement reached. It's a very simple agreement. Rutherford County, for allowing them to get this permission, got in return a tipping fee of, I think, $1.25 a ton or something for everything that comes in from the outside. And in turn, the city of Murfreesboro, I think, they agreed to treat all of the leachate that was coming out of that landfill. In return, both of us, which means all of the residents, got the ability to tip this, to put our things out there at really no cost. And that saved, as Shane just said, millions and millions of dollars that we haven't had to have our taxpayers take care of. What our county is doing, we don't have any property taxes going to solid waste. We do put a substantial amount of our sales tax revenue in there to handle that. So that's how we're funding our department. But if we have to ship this somewhere else, or if we have to invest millions and millions of dollars in some sort of technology that gasifies this and creates usable products, et cetera, it's going to be a major, major increase in the responsibilities of our citizens, and we have to find a way to minimize that.
What's the approximate lifespan left in Middle Point?
You know, when I was elected, it's funny, this whole process started, we had called Mayor Burgess and we had a breakfast at B. McNeil's to say, okay, we're you know, I know you guys are on board, we need to find a way to handle this, because, you know, we get asked routinely, and I'm giving you a roundabout answer to this, that we get asked, okay, why do you not have a recycling program in Murfreesboro? You know, there's some, I subscribe to a private recycle program.
Several people do, I believe.
You know, a progressive city like Murfreesboro, with all the things that we have that go on here, we just have not done that. And so we really started opening these discussions. But when I took office in 2014, it was 10 years. Or actually 12 years. And then over the last 2 years, that's gotten down to 8 years, no more than 8 years. So when you look at the growth, you know, Murfreesboro, the 13th fastest growing city in the country, you look at Rutherford County, as much as it's growing, Smyrna, Laverne, Eagleville with its new sewer system, you know, there's got to be a growth factor taken into account of how long it's gonna be around. And what we hear now with no expansion, it's no more than 8 years.
Middle Tennessee State University is a vital part of our community. And we had the chance to sit down with MTSU President Dr. Sidney McPhee in August. He talked about the growth of the campus over the years and the university's outreach for students, not just in this area, but around the world. What are the challenges ahead as far as enrollment? I know at one time funding was based on recruiting and getting students here. Now that's changed, where it's based on the product that you send forth, the graduates that come out.
Sure. There's a new formula that was put in place, I think, in 2010. But I want to correct the information that's been out there as this new formula was rolled out. The fact that state funded the university based on enrollment. If that were truly the case, MTSU would have been flushed with money, because for about 10 years, MTSU was the only institution that was growing. When I became president in 2001, we had like 13 or 14,000 students. We got up to a high of 27,000. And the state did not fully fund the institution. There's all kinds of data that shows that MTSU was one of the lowest funded institution in the state. And so while there is this great fanfare about this new formula, which is now based on outcomes, graduation, retention, and I support that, by the way. I think it's important to know where we were and where we're headed with respect to the enrollment piece. As you know, the 2008 crash of the recession had a significant impact on the community and on universities. People were without jobs, and so a lot of individuals came back to school. Now the economy is blooming. People are finding work. I'm hearing that a lot of companies are struggling to find employees. And so we've seen that impact. In addition, the demographic for the last 5 years shows a significant decline in high school graduating seniors, just the population. And so you are seeing a struggle across the nation of individual institutions trying to keep up with their enrollment. We've been impacted by it, and of course, compounding that was the new Tennessee Promise. All of the four-year institutions have had an impact on and we certainly support free community college, but a lot of students who are qualified to come to MTSU, certainly you can't blame them, and their parents are taking advantage of a free 2 years of college. And hopefully we'll see the benefits of that down the road this year or maybe next year.
A little early to really tell, I guess.
Yes, it's really too early to tell. But having said all of that, being the largest undergraduate university for many, many years, focusing exclusively mostly on undergraduate because of state mandates and the Gaia lawsuit that the state was dealing with. MTSU was able to hold on to its freshman class, which is about 3,000 students a year, new freshmen, first-time freshmen. That is really amazing considering all of those factors that came to play in the last 3, 4, 5 years. So we are now seeing a return. In fact, this year we have seen an increase in applications, an increase in admits, and now we're working to make sure that those who were admitted are enrolled.
Sure.
And then the second piece of this, what we are struggling with, and most of the universities are struggling with this, is the retention of students. Our average family income, median income for MTSU students, about $60,000. UT Knoxville is about $120,000. What does that mean? Many of our family members are working. Many of our students, they have family to support. Right. And so they start and they stop. Then life happens, illness in the family, etc. They start and they stop. And so we are working very hard to try to address that issue along with the economics. Because the state hasn't really funded the universities, all the universities like they should. Tuition has gone up over the years. We're finally getting to settle it down to 1 or 2% or 3% a year. A lot of students are struggling to afford a college education. And I hear it across this community. Just a couple of days ago, I was at one of the local restaurants, and the server, I always ask the server, are you an MTSU student?
I do the same.
And he said yes, and I said, are you excited about the new semester starting? And he said, well, I have to stop out and working to, earn some money to be able to come back. And I hear that time and time again. So you have all of these factors coming into play at our university, but we're able to at least keep the momentum going.
A major study of what's known as the historic Bottoms area near downtown Murfreesboro is well underway. One of the guests of the April episode of Storytellers happened to live in the Bottoms area as a child. Gracie Turner talked about life there, how residents of the community worked together, and how flooding was a major concern. And we're pleased to have as our guest now a former resident of the Bottoms area and a lifelong resident of Rutherford County. And that's a longtime friend, a personal friend, that's Gracie Turner. Gracie, welcome to Murfreesboro Storyteller.
Thank you.
Tell me about your recollections of growing up in the Bottoms area. How long did you live there?
From the time I was in the first grade at Bradley School.
Okay.
And we moved from there. I think I was about 12 years old.
Okay. Reflect upon when you were living there as just a young child. Were there many families living in the Bottoms area?
Yes, quite a few.
And one of my longest recollections is whenever we had a heavy rain and Town Creek or Lytle Creek would flood, then the Bottoms area would flood.
The water would come down the hill like this was on a street and would come down, and it had a ditch. We didn't call it no hole. It was a ditch where the water would rise. And that's when my father knew that we had to move and leave. We would go to our granny's house, and she was on the corner of Front and Vine Street.
Okay.
And the water didn't rise there. That's right there where they were free to hide in the water. And that's when my father knew that we had to move out when that water started rising.
And when that would fill up, then it would rise and flood the houses.
Come up in the yard and everywhere.
Now, I have a recollection of a lot of the houses being built on stilts. Was that because of the flooding?
Well, mostly what we call our steps.
Steps, I'm sorry.
Our steps,
Okay.
The steps that we had to come up to go across the water. So then we had to move. Because if you go straight up Church Street, the water would, it wasn't as high, but right in the bottom is when it started rising.
Okay.
And Daddy knew we had to move out.
Where would that have been in relation to where the city hall is now? Somewhere in the, would that be the deepest part?
No,
Okay.
the deepest part would be right at the corner of State and Walnut Street.
At the corner of State and Walnut. Okay.
Street,
All right.
Walnut Street.
That's
That
where
was the lowest part,
Okay.
because we could tell. And my grandmother, she lived on Vine Street, and the lowest part was Vine Street and then Front Street, but it didn't rise there. And that's why we would always have to move out and go to her home. But before moving out, our father would always stack our furniture. So he worked at a lumber yard down there, I always called the bottom industrial place.
Okay.
But they had mills and grocery stores.
What's your fondest recollection of growing up and living all your life in Murfreesboro?
Well, I would say we had a good raising and it was fun. Our mother and father, they joined in with us to play the games that we had. Just really games, horseshoe pitching and bicycle riding. And it was love and unity in the bottom. If one had a garden, they all would come together and ask for whatever they had in their garden and it was shared.
Wonderful.
And we like, it really was. And we had neighbors. And we loved the grocery stores because our pennies would buy the suckers and the big cookies that we wanted all the time. And sometimes they give you an extra one because you did. And on the corner, it was a mill. They would bring the corn there on the cob and they would fix the mill. And we stayed right in the middle of the block from that mill.
Okay.
And when we see the wagons come, we stand on the sidewalk watching them go in with the sacks, and they come out with the meal.
Okay. Our community has dedicated individuals from police to fire and rescue that are committed to serve and protect us. One of the many aspects in that protection would be the Rutherford County Emergency Communications District. In October, we visited their headquarters and spoke to Director Steve Smith and Board Chair Mike Walker about the district's role in protecting citizens. Steve, first of all, tell us what is the Rutherford County Emergency Communications District?
Well, Mr. Hood, the Rutherford County Emergency Communications District was created in 1986 as a result of enabling a resolution and legislation passed by the Tennessee General Assembly that placed the opportunity for citizens in each county across the state to vote on implementing a 911 system. Rutherford County's was held in the 1986 general election, and at that time we had greater than a 90% approval rating, which was one of the highest, if not the highest, in the state.
It was for many years, I think,
Yes.
before another county had a higher percentage, but we certainly had a tremendous amount of support from the whole citizens of the community to have this in operation.
Yes, sir, we did, and we also had tremendous support from our elected officials, not only public safety, but our mayors and our city councils and aldermen, and the whole community in Rutherford County came together for this important service.
Chief Walker, first knew you, I guess, as Colonel of the Tennessee Highway Patrol and now Chief of the Laverne Police Department. As chairman of the board, what are your duties?
Basically to be here and assist Steve if he needs anything from the board itself or needs to discuss something or to represent the board at various things throughout the year, and to be there to guide the meetings as we go through. And as you know very well, this board has a history that's very hard to live up to. As long as you've been on the board, that's the one thing that I've known you a long time and I admire you, but being on this board and ensuring with those others who have served for so many years in the past and on through into the group that's here now, it's one of the best run boards anywhere in this country, if not the best, because you have good people here who care about the people we serve and are here to do the right thing, and they protect their interests.
And everyone on the board, with the exception of one, namely me, is a head of a particular department in the county, as I recall.
Yes, sir.
Like Laverne Police Department. As chief of the Laverne Police Department, what does this mean to that community? How is it serving?
there's no way Laverne could have its own PSAP equipment and fund it totally.
Chief, what is a PSAP?
A public safety answering point, which is where when you dial 911 on your phone and someone on the other end says, 911, what's the location of your emergency, or what is your emergency? Okay. And that's what I like to call an emergency communications specialist, usually called a dispatcher by many, but they do much more than that. And that equipment costs a tremendous amount of money, the connectivity does, and Rutherford County pulls all of it together for all of us, and we have various PSAPs throughout the county with the various agencies, but we share the same equipment. And that's what the board does, is all the fees that are collected for funding 911 under state law, it's used very wisely, and we have some very high quality, some very modern technology, and even more coming. And Steve may want to talk about that a little bit later, so I'll stay away from that right now.
As I recall, Steve, there are two types of operations. Rutherford County has the operators, those answering the calls, they're in the various departments of the county, and some counties have a centrally located E911 center.
That is correct. One of the options allowed to local government is to consolidate, as it's referred to, and some districts across the state have done that, generally smaller districts. But here in Rutherford County, our public safety answering points that Chief Walker mentioned are based on a geopolitical boundary jurisdiction. So your call in Laverne, if you're a citizen in Laverne or you're traveling through Laverne, should go to your 911 call should go to the appropriate jurisdiction that would send you emergency services. Same holds true for Smyrna. The same holds true for the city of Murfreesboro. The city of Eagleville is actually dispatched by the Sheriff's Department, but we have a zone created for them should they ever have a full-time dispatch. And then we, as we sit here today, we have a backup center to serve any of those agencies should they need to relocate. Our first priority is in a disaster or a system technical problem, but we also have this facility in use for training or when there may be renovations or work going on inside a dispatch center, which is very critical operation, and we want those hardworking telecommunicators to be in an environment where they wouldn't be distracted and wouldn't have to compete with noise, for example, in a construction project.
So that's where our program is originating today.
Yes, sir.
How many setups or how many operators could you have in this particular location?
Well, it depends on size of the jurisdiction. The city of Murfreesboro is expanding, going into their new police headquarters, but we have across the district, which includes all of Rutherford County, we have approximately 25 positions capable of answering 911 calls. Also, one of the added advantages of enhanced 911 or next generation 911 as it's being referred to now is those calls, should it be busy at one location, will route over to another location. So our mission and our efforts are always to be striving as hard as we can to make sure that no one calling 911 doesn't get a voice on the other end.
Finally, in November, we visited Earth Experience, the Middle Tennessee Museum of Natural History. Located near downtown Murfreesboro, this museum is filled with natural artifacts from fossils to gemstones, and it also features a life-size replica of a dinosaur. Tell us about the Middle Tennessee Museum. How did this originate?
Well, my friend Louis Elrod and I had been talking for years about how we wish there would have been, wish there was a natural history museum in Middle Tennessee, because there is no other natural history museum. And finally, about 5 years ago, we just started talking that, well, if no one else is going to start the museum, maybe we can do it. I'm a fossil guy. I've got a fairly good fossil collection. Louis Elrod was a mineral guy and had an extensive mineral collection. And so we pooled our collections and started talking to other people and figuring out how do we get a museum started.
Interesting combination between you and Louis having the different backgrounds and different interests then.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Louis's mineral collection is world class. And rivals some collections you would see at some of the national natural history museums, the Field Museum in Chicago, maybe even the Smithsonian, although the Smithsonian probably has more, but the Smithsonian has such a small percentage of their minerals on display. And my fossil collection included dinosaur bones and local fossils and fossils from all over other countries. So yeah, it was a good start. And since the museum is opened, we've been open for about 3 years now.
Okay.
We've had huge donations. People have donated their rock collections or their family, their grandfather's rock collection, or in some cases their great-grandfather's rock collection. And so we have probably more than tripled our collection in the 3 years we've been open.
How many square feet do you have in the museum?
Right now our museum is a little over 5,000 square feet, and we've kind of got it stuffed about as full as we can get it. In fact, we have lots of stuff that it's just in storage. We even have things on loan to other museums just because we don't have room for it right now.
Are you still accepting donations in the way of fossils and other items?
Oh yeah, we're always happy to have more donations. We may not be able to put it out on display, but we will hold on to it because we expect to expand someday. I mean, we've got a great thing started and we want to see it grow.
Speaking of donations, makes me think of funding. How do you derive your funding? Where your funds come from?
Right now, all of our funding has just been from small private donations.
Okay.
We've been trying to look into getting funding from the state or from the city. It's a process and it takes a while, and you have to know how to do it, which a lot of us are scientists or retired people and don't have the background to know how to go about getting the funding. So it's been a learning curve and figuring out how to get that started. Hopefully over the next year or two we'll actually be able to get some funding. But we have put our whole museum together with very little money, but lots and lots of hard work.
You have a reproduction of a dinosaur in there, is that right? Or a copy? Is that the correct term?
Yeah, well, in several of the rooms we have what we call cast of dinosaur bones. So the cast, what they do is they will take an original fossil and they will make a mold of it out of silicone rubber. And the silicone rubber picks up every small little detail on the fossil. And then once you have the mold made, then you put in a filler in the mold, usually a resin, and then when the resin hardens you get an exact copy of the fossil. The molding and casting process is so accurate you can do scientific work on the cast of the fossils. And so we do have several cast, and we have real dinosaur bones as well, and we clearly mark which is cast and which is real bones. And speaking of cast, and moving on to a different room, probably the most impressive thing we have in the whole museum is our cast of a full T-Rex skeleton.
Okay, that's what I was referring to, yes. Not giving the right terminology.
Yes. So our T-Rex, the original fossil was found in Montana, okay. And the original skeleton is on display at the Museum of the Rockies. The cast is 38 feet long, and he stands 9 feet tall in our museum because our ceilings are 9 feet tall. Mm-hmm. So he's crouching a little bit because he should be probably more like about 13 or 14 feet tall at the hips.
Which is about typical size for one of them?
That's a typical full-grown T-Rex. Okay. Most of the larger T-Rex skeletons fall within that range of about 37 to about 41 feet long. So it's a good size adult.
We learned a lot about our community and its rich history in 2017. There are more stories to tell, and we're looking forward to what 2018 will bring. Visit the city's YouTube channel to catch the episodes we featured, plus a lot more. On next month's Storytellers, we revisit the story of Burrell and K.D. Ganaway. One was a founding father of our city, and the other was a descendant of slaves who became a successful 20th century photographer. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time on Murfreesboro Storytellers.